The alarm bells rang across the Sara Prime for the seventh time this month. In the massive council chamber at the heart of the Valerian Empire's capital, High Counselor Deho stood before a room filled with desperate faces. The holographic display behind him showed another red mark on their star map. Colony Xerion 4 had gone silent 3 hours ago. That makes 47 worlds in 3 years, Deho said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. The tall, blue-skinned Valerian had led his people through many crises, but nothing like this. 47 entire star systems gone. Commander Sora stepped forward from the military section. Her silver armor caught the light from the chamber's crystal dome as she spoke. Our long-range scouts confirm it, High Counselor. The same pattern as before. No debris, no energy signatures, no survivors. Just empty space where Xerion 4 used to be. The council chamber erupted in worried voices. Representatives from dozens of worlds spoke at once, their fear echoing off the tall walls. Some demanded stronger defenses. Others suggested evacuation plans. A few even whispered about surrender, though surrender to what, nobody knew. Silence. Deho's voice boomed across the chamber. The room fell quiet. We have discussed every option. Our best weapons cannot touch this creature. Our fastest ships cannot escape it. Our strongest shields cannot protect us. He paused, looking at each face in turn. But we have one option left. Dr. Hai-Jin, the Empire's leading scientist, stood up slowly. Her lab coat was wrinkled from days of sleepless work. The ancient text we found in the Kithara ruins, she said. The summoning ritual. Murmurs filled the chamber again. The idea seemed impossible, even desperate. The ruins on Kithara had been studied for centuries. Most scholars believed the texts were just myths from a long-dead civilization. Stories of powerful warriors called from other worlds to fight great evils. General Kyung-Soo slammed his fist on his desk. Fairy tales and ancient nonsense. We need real weapons, not magic spells. What real weapons? Sora shot back. We have tried everything, General. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, reality bombs. Nothing works against the Void Stalker. It exists between dimensions. Our attacks pass right through it. The creature they feared had many names across the Empire. Some called it the Shadow that Devours. Others knew it as the Space Eater. But most simply called it the Void Stalker. For 3 centuries it had appeared at the edges of their space, consuming entire star systems before vanishing again. No one knew where it came from or what it wanted. Dr. Hai-Jin activated her personal holographic display. Ancient symbols appeared in the air above her hands. The texts speak of a chosen warrior from beyond the veil, someone with the power to face what we cannot. She looked around the room. The ritual requires enormous energy, but we have the technology to power it. And if this warrior refuses to help us? Asked Counselor Min-jae from the outer colonies. Or what if the summoning brings something worse than the Void Stalker? Then we die anyway, Deho said simply. At least this way we try something new. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued for more conventional solutions. Others wanted to attempt peaceful contact with the creature, though no one knew how. A few suggested abandoning their space entirely and fleeing to distant galaxies. But in the end, fear won. The Void Stalker had never shown mercy. It had never negotiated. It simply appeared, consumed everything in a star system, and moved on. If the ancient ritual could bring them a champion, they had to try. The vote was close, but it passed. Preparations began immediately. 3 days later, in the deepest level of the Thesara Science Institute, teams of engineers worked around the clock. They had converted the main laboratory into a massive summoning chamber. Ancient symbols carved from the Kithara ruins covered the walls. Energy conduits snaked across the floor, connecting to 3 different power sources across the planet. Dr. Hai-Jin stood at the control station, double-checking every calculation. The ritual would drain power from 3 solar collectors at once. If something went wrong, half the planet could lose electricity for weeks. Commander Sora paced nearby in her full battle armor. Elite guards surrounded the chamber, though no one knew what they might need to fight. Are you certain about this? She asked for the 10th time. As certain as I can be, Hyejin replied. The energy patterns match perfectly with the ancient texts. The dimensional mathematics work out. If the ritual can actually summon someone, this setup will do it. High Counselor Deho entered the chamber with General Kyung-Soo and several other officials. They had come to witness either their salvation or their final mistake. The general carried a case containing their most advanced weapons and armor, ready to equip whatever warrior appeared. Begin the summoning, Daeho commanded. Yejin activated the power systems. Energy flowed through the conduits, making them glow bright blue. The ancient symbols on the walls began to shine with the same light. The air in the center of the chamber started to shimmer and twist. Power at 60%, reported one of the technicians. The shimmer became a swirling vortex of light and shadow. Reality itself seemed to bend around the summoning circle. Warning alarms sounded as the energy readings went beyond their instrument's ability to measure. 80% power. Dimensional barriers weakening. The vortex grew larger and brighter. Through the swirling energy, they could see something else. Another place, another time. Briefly, they glimpsed a world with a blue sky and white clouds. Then the vortex exploded outward in a flash of blinding light. When their vision cleared, a figure stood in the center of the chamber. He was shorter than most Valerians, with tan skin and dark hair. He wore strange gray clothing and carried a pack filled with unfamiliar tools. Most surprising of all, he looked completely confused and not particularly warrior-like. "Where am I?" the human asked, looking around at the advanced technology and alien faces surrounding him. His voice was calm but puzzled. "And who are you people?" General Kyung-soo stepped forward with disappointment clear on his face. "This is our great warrior? He looks like a technician." The human straightened up and held out his hand in what seemed to be a peaceful gesture. "I'm Taemin Kim, Marine engineer with the Earth Colonial Fleet. I was working on a power coupling problem when everything went white." He looked at each of them in turn. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" Commander Sora exchanged glances with Dr. Hyejin. This was not the mighty champion they had expected. But the summoning had worked. The ancient ritual had reached across dimensions and brought them someone. High Counselor Daeho stepped forward and began to explain their desperate situation. As he spoke of the Void Stalker and the destruction of 47 worlds, something changed in the human's expression. Instead of fear or excitement for battle, Taemin's eyes showed curiosity. "This creature," Taemin said when Daeho finished. "You say it exists between dimensions and your weapons can't touch it?" "That is correct," Sora confirmed. "But it can affect your physical reality enough to destroy entire star systems?" "Yes." Taemin rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "That's fascinating. How does it move between different dimensional states? What kind of energy signature does it produce? Have you tried analyzing its behavior patterns?" General Kyung-soo made an angry sound. "We did not summon you here to study the beast. We summoned you to kill it." The human engineer looked at him with genuine surprise. "Kill it? But if it's a dimensional entity, conventional weapons won't work anyway. First, we need to understand what it is and how it operates. Then maybe we can figure out how to deal with it." The Valerians stared at their summoned champion. This was not going according to plan at all. Taemin spent 3 days studying everything the Valerians knew about the Voidstalker. He sat in the archive room deep beneath the Science Institute, surrounded by data files and holographic displays. Dr. Heejin worked beside him, translating technical terms and explaining Valerian technology. "Look at this pattern," Taemin said, pointing at a star map showing the creature's attacks over the past 50 years. "It's not random at all. Every system it destroyed had a major communication hub." Heejin leaned closer to study the map. "I never noticed that before. We always focused on the military bases and population centers it destroyed. But those weren't the first targets." Taemin continued. "In every case, it hit the communication stations first, then the other structures. Almost like it was trying to make contact before everything went wrong." Commander Sora entered the archive room, still wearing her battle armor. She had barely slept since the summoning, constantly preparing for the next attack. "The creature has been spotted near the Kepler-7 mining station," she announced. "We're mobilizing the fleet immediately. Are you ready, champion?" Taemin looked up from his research. "I need more time to understand its behavior patterns. Maybe we could try communicating with it instead of attacking." "Communicating?" Sora's voice rose in disbelief. "That thing has killed billions of our people." "There is no communication with pure evil." "But what if it's not evil?" Taemin asked quietly. "What if it's trying to communicate and doesn't understand that its presence is deadly to you?" General Kyung-soo stomped into the room, his heavy boots echoing off the walls. "Enough of this nonsense. The beast approaches our territory again. You will take our weapons and destroy it, or we will find another way." The argument continued for an hour. The Valerian leaders wanted immediate action. Taman wanted more time to study. In the end, High Counselor Deho made the decision. We go to Kepler-7, he declared. But we will try both approaches. Taman will have one chance to attempt communication. If that fails, we attack with everything we have. The journey to Kepler-7 took 18 hours aboard the Valerian flagship Thunder of Thesara. Taman used the time to modify a small communication device with parts from his engineering kit. He programmed it to broadcast mathematical sequences and harmonic frequencies instead of words. Captain Minho commanded the ship's bridge. He was younger than the other officers with fewer medals on his uniform, but his crew respected him. Long-range sensors are picking up dimensional distortions near the mining station, he reported. The creature is definitely there. Through the main view screen, they could see Kepler-7 in the distance. The mining station looked like a small city floating in space with dozens of ships docked around it. Warning lights flashed as evacuation shuttles carried workers to safety. There. Dr. Hyojin pointed at the sensor display. Dimensional readings are off the charts. It's materializing. The Void Stalker appeared slowly, like a shadow growing solid. It was massive, larger than any ship in their fleet. Its body looked like living darkness filled with tiny stars. Long tentacles of pure energy stretched out from its center, bending space around them. All ships prepare to attack, Commander Sora ordered over the communication system. Wait, Taemin said firmly. Give me 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to try. Against every instinct, Sora nodded. 5 minutes. Then we open fire. Taemin climbed into a small shuttlecraft. The Valerian pilot, a nervous young officer named Jong-Soo, looked terrified. Are you sure about this, sir? That thing could destroy us instantly. I hope not, Taemin replied, activating his modified communication device. Take us closer, but slowly. No sudden movements. The shuttle moved toward the Void Stalker. As they approached, the creature stopped its advance toward the mining station. Its star-filled body pulsed with different colors of light. It's watching us, Jung-Soo whispered. Taemin activated his device. Mathematical sequences began broadcasting toward the creature. Prime numbers, geometric ratios, harmonic frequencies, universal concepts that any intelligent being should recognize. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Void Stalker's body began to pulse in rhythm with the signals. Its tentacles moved in complex patterns, creating gravitational waves that the shuttle's sensors detected. It's responding, Taemin said, excitement in his voice. The gravitational waves are forming patterns. It's trying to communicate back. The creature's response was incredibly complex. Wave after wave of gravitational pulses carried information that the shuttle's computer could barely process. But through the mathematical chaos, Taemin began to see structure, emotion, intelligence, and loneliness. Deep, overwhelming loneliness that had lasted for millions of years. This is incredible, he said, recording everything. It's not a mindless destroyer. It's trying to talk to us, but the moment of wonder ended quickly. The Valerian fleet's 5-minute deadline had passed. Commander Sora's voice crackled over the communication system. All ships, open fire. Destroy that creature before it kills more innocent people. Energy beams and missiles streaked through space toward the Void Stalker. But instead of striking the creature, the weapons passed right through it. The creature existed in a slightly different dimensional state, making it immune to normal attacks. The Void Stalker reacted to the attack with what could only be described as surprise and sadness. Its gravitational pulses became more urgent, almost pleading. Then, without warning, it began to phase back into its home dimension. No, wait, Taemin called out, but it was too late. Before disappearing completely, the creature sent one final, powerful gravitational wave toward their shuttle. The wave was different from the others, carrying more complex information. Then the Void Stalker vanished, leaving empty space where it had been. The shuttle's computer worked frantically to decode the final message. When the translation appeared on the screen, Taemin's heart sank. The message was simple but heartbreaking. Why do you run? Why do you hurt? I am alone, so alone. Jong-Soo stared at the translation in shock. It's trying to make friends? I think so, Taemin replied quietly. And we just shot at it. The shuttle returned to the flagship where Taemin faced angry questions from the military commanders. They wanted to know why he hadn't attacked when he had the chance, why he had wasted their opportunity. Because it's not a monster, Taemin explained to the assembled officers. It's a person, A very lonely person who doesn't understand why everyone runs away from it. General Kyung-soo laughed bitterly. A person? That thing has destroyed 47 worlds. By accident, Taemin insisted. I think its natural dimensional abilities are deadly to normal matter, but it doesn't realize that. It's trying to communicate, but its presence accidentally destroys everything it touches. Commander Sora shook her head. Even if that's true, the result is the same. It kills our people. It must be stopped. The debate raged for hours as the fleet returned to the Sara Prime. Some officers began to consider Taemin's theory, especially Captain Minho, who had witnessed the creature's reaction to their attack, but most remained convinced that the Voidstalker was purely evil. Dr. Hyjin worked tirelessly to analyze the gravitational wave recordings. The more she studied them, the more she became convinced that Taemin was right. The patterns showed complex thoughts, emotions, and desperate attempts at communication. Look at these frequency modulations, she said, showing her data to anyone who would listen. This is language, sophisticated multi-layered language, and the emotional undertones are unmistakable. This creature is suffering. But her evidence wasn't enough to change military policy. When they reached the Sara Prime, High Counselor Daeho called an emergency session of the War Council. The summoned champion has failed in his mission, General Kyung-soo declared before the assembled leaders. Instead of destroying our enemy, he claims to have made friends with it. I recommend we strip him of his weapons and find a real warrior to complete the task. The council members argued late into the night. Some supported Taemin's peaceful approach, intrigued by the possibility that their greatest enemy might actually be a potential ally. Others demanded immediate action, fearing that any delay would result in more destroyed worlds. Finally, Daeho made his decision. The champion will have one more chance to prove his theory, but if the creature attacks again, we will use every weapon at our disposal to destroy it. As the council session ended, young diplomat Ji-won approached Taemin in the hallway. She had listened to all the debates with growing interest. I believe you, she said quietly. My grandmother used to tell stories about the first contact between our people and the Zephyrians. We almost went to war because we misunderstood their greeting rituals. What if this is the same thing but on a much larger scale? Taemin nodded gratefully. It was good to know that at least someone understood what he was trying to do. But time was running short. Intelligence reports suggested the Voidstalker would appear again soon, and next time, the Valerian military might not give him any chance to communicate. He had to find a way to bridge the gap between two completely different forms of life, before fear and misunderstanding destroyed any hope of peace. The tribunal chamber in Thessera Prime buzzed with tension. High Counselor Daeho sat at the center of a curved table, flanked by military leaders and government officials. Taemin stood alone in the middle of the room facing their judgment. You had the perfect opportunity to destroy our greatest enemy, General Kyung-soo said, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Instead, you chose to have a conversation with it. 47 worlds have been destroyed and you want to chat. Taemin remained calm despite the angry voices around him. I understand your frustration, General, but I believe we're making a terrible mistake. The creature isn't trying to hurt anyone. Tell that to the families of billions of dead people, shouted Counselor Jae-sung from the outer colonies. His own world had barely escaped the Voidstalker's last attack. Dr. Hyjin stood up in the observer section. May I present our analysis of the communication attempt? She asked. Without waiting for permission, she activated her holographic display. The gravitational wave patterns filled the air above the tribunal table. Complex mathematical structures rotated slowly, showing the incredible intelligence behind the creature's signals. These are not the thoughts of a mindless beast, Hyjin explained. The mathematical concepts are more advanced than our own. The emotional indicators show pain, confusion, and desperate loneliness. This creature has been trying to communicate for a very long time. Counselor Min-jae leaned forward to study the patterns. Even if that's true, Dr. Hyjin, the creature's presence destroys everything around it. Intent doesn't matter if the result is death. But what if we could find a way to communicate safely? Taemin asked. What if the destruction is accidental and we can prevent it? General Kyung-soo slammed his hand on the table. What if? We don't have time for experiments. That thing could appear anywhere in our space and destroy another world while we're having philosophical debates. The arguments continued for hours. Some council members began to see the possibility that Taemin was right. Others remained convinced that the only solution was military force. During a break in the proceedings, diplomat Ji-won approached Tai-min with a datapad in her hands. She had spent days researching historical records looking for similar situations. "I found something interesting," she said quietly. 300 years ago, when the Void Stalker first appeared, it spent months in the Rigel system before any destruction occurred. Our ancestors' records show it was sending signals to our communication networks for weeks. Tai-min studied the old reports on her datapad. "They tried to respond?" "They tried to block the signals," Ji-won replied. "They thought it was some kind of attack on their computers. When the blocking failed, they sent military ships to investigate. That's when the first destruction happened. Right after they attacked it, Tai-min realized. It wasn't randomly destroying things. It was trying to make contact, and when they responded with violence, everything went wrong." When the tribunal resumed, Ji-won presented her historical evidence. The pattern became clearer with each example. The Void Stalker always attempted communication before any destruction occurred. It targeted communication hubs first, not military bases, and the destruction always started after military forces engaged it. Dr. Hyojin had more information to add. "I've been analyzing the final message it sent to Tai-min's shuttle. The translation is becoming clearer as our computers process more data." She activated a new holographic display. The gravitational wave pattern appeared, but this time with a detailed translation below it. The message was longer than they had first realized. "I am the last of my kind. My people lived between the spaces in the quiet dimensions where thought becomes form. A great darkness consumed our reality long ago. I have searched the empty spaces for others like us, but I find only small beings who flee when I approach. I do not understand why my presence causes such fear. I wish only for companionship after so many eons of solitude." The tribunal chamber fell silent. Even General Kyung-soo stared at the translation with a troubled expression. "It's been alone for millions of years," Tai-min said softly.
Can you imagine that kind of loneliness?
"It doesn't even understand that it's accidentally killing people. It exists partially outside our dimensional framework, so our physical laws don't apply to it the same way." Captain Minho, who had witnessed the communication attempt, spoke up from the military section. "I saw how it reacted when we opened fire. It looked surprised and hurt, not angry, like a child being scolded for something it didn't understand." But Counselor Jae-sung wasn't convinced. "Innocent or not, it remains a threat. How many more worlds must die while we try to teach it about dimensional physics?" Dr. Hyojin had an answer ready. "We could try building a dimensional interface. A device that would allow safe communication without the deadly side effects. The creature's own signals show us how it might work." "How long would that take?" Tae-ho asked. "Months, maybe a year," Hyojin admitted. "But if successful, it could open up communication with an entirely new form of life. Think of what we could learn from a being that has existed for millions of years." General Kyung-soo stood up angrily. "A year? While that monster roams free through our space? Absolutely not. I say we develop better weapons instead. Something that can affect dimensional entities." "That could make things worse," Tai-min warned. "If we hurt it deliberately, it might stop trying to be friendly. Right now, it's still hoping for contact. But if we convince it that we're enemies..." The discussion went in circles for the rest of the day. Fear battled against hope, military thinking against scientific curiosity. Some council members began to support Tai-min's approach, especially after hearing the creature's translated message. Young diplomat Ji-won made an important observation during the final debate. "We're always talking about what the creature might do to us. But what are we doing to it? For 3 centuries it has approached us in friendship, and we have responded with weapons and fear. From its perspective, we're the hostile ones." That evening, while the tribunal took a recess, Tai-min worked with Dr. Hyojin in her laboratory. They began designing preliminary plans for a dimensional communication interface. The work was challenging, requiring them to think about physics in completely new ways. "The creature exists in multiple dimensional states simultaneously," Hyojin explained as they worked. "That's why our weapons can't touch it, but also why its presence destabilizes normal matter. We need to create a buffer zone where both forms of existence can interact safely." They worked through the night, building theoretical models and running computer simulations. By morning, they had a basic design that might work. But they also had bad news waiting for them. Commander Sora arrived at the laboratory with a grim expression. Long-range sensors have detected dimensional distortions near the Centauri colonies. The creature is approaching inhabited space again. Taemin looked up from his work, tired but determined. How long before it arrives? 6 hours, maybe less, So-Ra replied. General Kyung-Soo is mobilizing the entire fleet. He's convinced the tribunal to authorize the use of experimental dimensional weapons. Dimensional weapons. Dr. Hee-jin looked alarmed. But we don't understand how they might affect a being like this. We could hurt it badly or even kill it. That's the point, So-Ra said grimly. The tribunal voted last night. If you cannot stop the creature peacefully within the next few hours, the military will destroy it by any means necessary. Taemin felt the weight of millions of lives on his shoulders. The Valerian people were counting on him to save them, but they wanted salvation through violence. The Void Stalker was counting on him too, though it didn't know it yet. For the first time in eons, someone was trying to understand it instead of fear it. I need to get to the Centauri system, Taemin said. I need to try communicating with it again, but this time with better equipment. The tribunal won't allow it, So-Ra replied. They consider you a security risk now. Some of them think the creature has somehow influenced your mind. But Ji-won had an idea. There might be another way. I could request diplomatic immunity for a peaceful first contact mission. Technically, this would be the first formal communication attempt between our species and a dimensional entity. It was a legal loophole, but it might work. While Ji-won rushed to file the necessary paperwork, Taemin and Hye-jin worked frantically to improve their communication device. They had one last chance to prevent a war between dimensions, and time was running out fast. The Void Stalker was approaching, still hoping for friendship after 3 centuries of loneliness. But this time, the Valerian military was ready with weapons designed to destroy dimensional entities. If Taemin failed, the creature that had searched the cosmos for companionship would finally find peace in death, and the Valerian Empire would lose the chance to make the greatest ally in their history. Everything depended on whether fear or understanding would win the day. Ji-won's diplomatic paperwork worked, but barely. High Counselor Dae-ho granted them 12 hours to attempt peaceful contact before the military's experimental weapons would be deployed. Taemin, Dr. Hye-jin, and Ji-won boarded a small research vessel called the Starseeker and raced toward the Centauri system. The ship's pilot was Captain Min-ho, who had volunteered for the dangerous mission. I saw how that creature reacted when we attacked it, he explained as they left Thessera Prime behind. If there's even a small chance you're right about it being friendly, we have to try. Dr. Hye-jin worked frantically in the ship's laboratory during their journey. She had improved the communication device with new dimensional stabilizers that might allow safer contact, but they were still experimenting with technology they barely understood. The theory is sound, she said, connecting the last power coupling, but I've never tested equipment designed to interact with interdimensional entities. We're essentially flying blind. Taemin studied the sensor readings from their destination. The dimensional distortions are getting stronger. Whatever the creature is doing out there, it's affecting space-time across several light years. Maybe it's trying to communicate with the Centauri colonies, Ji-won suggested. The same pattern as always. It appears near populated worlds and starts sending signals. They reached the edge of the Centauri system 18 hours later. Long-range sensors immediately detected the Void Stalker near the 3rd planet, where 2 million Valerian colonists lived in floating cities above the gas giant's atmosphere. The creature isn't moving toward the colonies, Captain Min-ho reported from the bridge. It's just waiting, like it's hoping they'll respond to its signals. Through the view screen, they could see the Void Stalker in the distance. It looked even larger than before, its star-filled body pulsing with slow, rhythmic light. Tentacles of pure energy stretched out in all directions, creating beautiful but dangerous distortions in space-time. The colonists have been trying to evacuate, Min-ho continued, but their ships are having trouble with the dimensional interference. Several transport vessels are stranded between the creature and the planet. Taemin made a decision that surprised everyone. I'm going out there. Not in a shuttle this time. I'm going to try entering its dimensional space directly. That's suicide, Dr. Hee-jin exclaimed. We don't know what the environment is like in its home dimension. You could be torn apart instantly, or I could finally have a real conversation with it. Taemin replied calmly. Look at those readings. The creature isn't trying to hurt anyone. It's being careful to stay away from the colonies while still attempting contact. It's learned from previous encounters. G1 checked the diplomatic communications. The Valerian fleet is 6 hours away. General Kyung-soo is bringing dimensional torpedo launchers and reality disruption bombs. If we're going to try this, it has to be now. Dr. Hyejin spent the next hour modifying a standard environmental suit with her dimensional stabilizers. The result looked like a normal spacesuit covered in glowing circuits and strange geometric patterns. The stabilizers should keep you anchored to normal spacetime, she explained as Taemin put on the suit. But I have no idea what you'll experience in a dimensional pocket. You could see things that aren't real, or stop existing in ways that matter to our reality. I'll take that chance, Taemin said. This might be our only opportunity to prevent a war captain. Minho piloted the Starseeker toward the Voidstalker. As they approached, the creature's pulsing lights changed color from deep blue to warm gold. It had noticed their approach and seemed happy. It remembers us, G1 said softly, watching the sensor readings. The gravitational wave patterns matched the greeting signals from our last encounter. When they reached the edge of the creature's dimensional field, Taemin activated his modified suit and stepped into the airlock. Dr. Hyejin monitored his vital signs from the control room while G1 recorded everything for the diplomatic archives. Dimensional stabilizers are working, Hyejin reported. His molecular structure is remaining stable despite the spatial distortions. Taemin floated away from the ship toward the center of the Voidstalker's energy field. As he crossed the boundary between normal space and the creature's dimensional pocket, the universe changed around him. He found himself floating in a realm of impossible beauty. Streams of light flowed like rivers through space, carrying melodies that he could somehow hear despite the vacuum. Geometric shapes that had no names drifted past, their surfaces reflecting memories and emotions from across the galaxy. And in the center of it all, the Voidstalker revealed its true form. It was not the terrifying shadow monster that the Valerians saw. Here in its home dimension, it appeared as a vast ancient being made of crystallized starlight. Its body was covered in patterns that showed the history of its species. Cities that existed in folded space, art forms that used gravity as a canvas, and music created from the rotation of planets. You came back, the creature said, its voice resonating directly in Taemin's mind. I had hoped but feared to hope too much. I wanted to understand, Taemin replied, somehow knowing that his thoughts would be heard. My people are afraid because they don't know what you are. The creature showed him memories from its incredible past. Its species, the Watchers of the Deep Silence, had once thrived in the spaces between dimensions. They were beings of pure consciousness and energy, capable of existing in multiple realities at once. We were explorers and artists, the Watcher explained. We traveled between the layers of existence, creating beauty from the fundamental forces of the universe. But then came the consuming dark. Taemin saw visions of the disaster that had destroyed the Watcher's civilization. A massive tear in reality itself had appeared at the center of their dimensional realm, devouring everything it touched. The Watchers had tried to flee, but the tear grew faster than they could escape. I am the last, the creature said, its mental voice heavy with grief. For millions of your years I have searched the empty spaces, hoping to find others like me. But I found only younger species who fear my presence. Why do your people die when I come near? The Watcher asked with genuine confusion. I try to be gentle, to speak softly, but still they flee or dissolve into component atoms. I do not understand the fragility of single-dimension existence. Taemin shared his own memories in return, showing the creature how its natural dimensional abilities affected normal matter. The Watcher was shocked to learn that its attempts at communication were accidentally deadly to three-dimensional beings. I have been a destroyer without knowing it, the creature said with horror. All this time I thought the smaller beings were simply afraid of me because I was strange. I never realized that my very presence was killing them. We can fix this, Taemin said quickly. My people are working on technology that could allow safe communication. We could build interfaces that let us talk without the dangerous effects. For the first time in eons, the Watcher felt something like hope. You would do this? Despite all the unintended harm I have caused? That's what my species does, Taemin explained. We build bridges between different kinds of people. We find ways to understand each other. The Watcher shared more of its memories, showing Taemin the vast knowledge it had accumulated over millions of years. Sciences that used emotion as a tool, mathematics based on the music of black holes, and philosophical concepts that could only be understood by immortal beings. "I could teach your people so much," the creature said. "The secrets of dimensional travel, the true nature of consciousness, the art of building with gravity and time. I have been so lonely, but I have never stopped learning." As they communicated, Taman began to understand just how different their two species were. The Watcher thought in terms of geological time, considering 1,000 years to be a brief moment. Its concept of individuality was fluid. It could split its consciousness into multiple parts or merge with other beings at will. But despite these differences, they shared something fundamental: curiosity about the universe and a desire to connect with others. "Your people fear me now," the Watcher said. "How can we overcome that fear?" "By showing them who you really are," Taman replied. "Not the terrifying shadow they see from outside, but the lonely scholar trying to make friends." Their conversation was interrupted by urgent signals from the Starseeker. Dr. Hyjin's voice came through Taman's suit radio, filled with worry. "Taman, the Valerian fleet has arrived early. They're charging their dimensional weapons. You need to get out of there now." Through the swirling energies around them, Taman could see the approaching warships. Dozens of Valerian vessels had surrounded the creature's position, their weapons glowing with dangerous energy. The Watcher sensed the threat immediately. "They come with tools designed to hurt beings like me. I can feel the dimensional disruption patterns from their weapons. Don't fight them," Taman pleaded. "They're acting from fear, not evil. If you hurt them, it will prove that they were right to be afraid. But they wish to unmake me," the Watcher replied. "These weapons could scatter my consciousness across multiple dimensions. I would cease to exist in any meaningful way." Taman could see the dilemma clearly. The Watcher had every right to defend itself, but any show of force would convince the V. General Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of his flagship, the hammer of justice, watching the dimensional readings spike across his screens. The Void Stalker hung motionless in space before them, larger and more terrifying than any previous encounter. Somewhere inside that swirling mass of dark energy, the human Taman had disappeared. "The creature has consumed our champion," the general announced to his fleet. "It lured him close with false promises of communication, then devoured him like all the others." Captain Minho's voice crackled over the communication system from the Starseeker. "General, that's not what happened." Taman entered the creature's dimensional space voluntarily. His vital signs are still strong. "They're communicating." "Lies," Kyung-soo snapped back. "No one survives inside that monster. What you're seeing are false readings, tricks meant to confuse us." He turned to his weapons officer. "Charge all dimensional torpedo tubes. Prepare reality disruption bombs." Dr. Hyjin frantically tried to contact the military fleet from her research ship. "General, please listen. We're receiving complex gravitational wave patterns from both Taman and the creature. They're having an actual conversation. This could be the breakthrough we've been hoping for." But fear and anger had taken control of the Valerian military. For 3 centuries, they had watched this creature destroy their worlds. Now finally, they had weapons that could fight back. The time for talk had ended. "All ships assume attack formation," Kyung-soo ordered. "We will surround the beast and fire everything at once. It will not escape this time." 47 Valerian warships moved into position around the Void Stalker. Each ship carried the latest dimensional weapons technology, designed specifically to disrupt beings that existed between realities. The combined firepower could theoretically destroy an entire moon. Inside the creature's dimensional space, Taman felt the approaching danger like a cold wind. The Watcher's crystalline form flickered with distress as it sensed the weapons targeting it. "They mean to scatter my essence across the void," the ancient being said, its mental voice filled with sadness rather than anger. "I understand their fear, but I had hoped for more time to prove my peaceful intentions." "Don't give up yet," Taman replied, trying to figure out how to contact the fleet from inside the dimensional pocket. "Let me try to reach them." But the Watcher shook its massive head, causing ripples of light to flow through the space around them. "The weapons they carry are designed to cause me great pain before death. If they fire, I may lose control of my dimensional abilities. The resulting chaos could destroy everything within several light years." Taman realized the true scope of the disaster approaching. If the Void Stalker lost control while defending itself, it wouldn't just destroy the military fleet. The dimensional disruption could collapse local space-time, wiping out the Centauri colonies and everything else in the system. There has to be another way, he said desperately. What if you tried to show them what you really are? Not the shadow they see from outside, but your true form. The Watcher considered this. I could extend my dimensional space outward, allowing them to see as you see, but the process might be interpreted as an attack. On the fleet's flagship, Weapons Officer Sub-Commander Dong Jun reported that all systems were ready. Dimensional torpedoes charged to maximum, General. Reality bombs armed and targeted. We have a clear shot at the creature's center mass. Fire, General Kyung-soo commanded. The space around the Centauri system exploded with deadly energy. Dimensional torpedoes streaked through space, followed by reality disruption bombs designed to tear holes in the fabric of existence itself. The weapons had never been tested against a living target, but the military scientists were confident they would work. Instead of striking the Void Stalker directly, the weapons hit something unexpected. A shimmering barrier of crystalline light had appeared around the creature, deflecting the attacks harmlessly into empty space. But the effort of creating the barrier caused visible strain to the entity within. Impossible, Kyung-soo shouted. Nothing can stop dimensional weapons. Inside the creature's pocket dimension, Taemin watched the Watcher struggle to maintain its protective barrier while simultaneously keeping its dimensional abilities under control. The ancient being's crystalline form flickered and dimmed with each wave of attacks. I cannot maintain this much longer, the Watcher admitted. Your people's weapons are designed specifically to cause pain to beings like me. Each impact weakens my ability to remain stable. What happens if you lose control? Taemin asked, though he feared the answer. My dimensional field will collapse outward in an uncontrolled burst. Everything within 10 light years will be pulled into dimensional chaos. Your colonies, your military ships, perhaps even your home world if the collapse spreads far enough. Outside, the Valerian fleet regrouped for another attack. General Kyung-soo was furious that their first assault had failed, but he interpreted the creature's defensive barrier as proof of its hostile intentions. It's protecting itself because it knows we can hurt it, he announced to his fleet. All ships concentrate fire on a single point. We'll break through its defenses. Captain Minho tried one more time to contact the general from his position near the research ship. Sir, our sensors are showing massive dimensional instability around the creature. If it loses control, the resulting explosion could destroy this entire system. Captain Minho, you are hereby relieved of command for insubordination, Kyung-soo replied coldly. Return to base immediately or I will consider your ship a hostile target. But Minho had seen too much to give up now. During the first attack, he had noticed something the other ships missed. Several stranded civilian transports were caught between the fleet and the creature, unable to escape due to dimensional interference. When the weapons fire began, the Void Stalker had actually moved to shield those ships from stray energy blasts. All civilian vessels, this is Captain Minho, he broadcast on emergency frequencies. The creature is protecting you, not threatening you. Do not fire on it! His message reached the civilian transport captain Yoon-mi, whose ship carried 300 colonist families. She had been preparing to launch escape pods when she noticed the same thing Minho had seen. He's right, she reported to anyone listening. That thing moved between us and the weapons fire. It's trying to keep us safe. Dr. Heejin seized on this evidence. General Kyung-soo, please review the sensor data from the first attack. The creature actively protected civilian ships. Its behavior is completely consistent with peaceful intentions. But the general was beyond listening to reason. 3 centuries of fear and hatred had built up in the Valerian military, and he saw any defense of the creature as evidence of corruption or mental influence. Second wave, fire at will, he ordered. This time the weapon struck with coordinated precision. The Watcher's protective barrier cracked under the assault, allowing several dimensional torpedoes to penetrate its defenses. The ancient being cried out in pain that echoed across multiple dimensions, a sound of pure anguish that every psychic-sensitive person in the fleet could feel. Stop, Taemin screamed, but there was no way for his voice to reach the attacking ships. The Watcher's form began to destabilize as dimensional energy leaked uncontrollably from its wounds. The beautiful crystalline structure started to crack and fragment, releasing wild bursts of space-time distortion. I am losing cohesion, the creature said weakly. Soon my consciousness will scatter, and my dimensional field will collapse. Your people will get their wish, I will die. But they will die with me around the battle zone. Space itself began to warp and twist. The stranded civilian ships found their hulls stretching in impossible directions as gravity fluctuated wildly. Several Valerian warships reported hull breaches as reality became unstable around them. On the flagship's bridge, Sub-Commander Dong Jun looked up from his sensor readings with alarm. "General, we're detecting massive space-time distortion spreading outward from the creature. If this continues, the disruption could reach the Centauri colonies." For the first time since the battle began, General Kyung-soo hesitated. He had wanted to destroy the Void Stalker, not cause the deaths of millions of his own people. Captain Minho made a desperate decision. Against direct orders, he piloted his ship closer to the creature's dimensional field and activated his ship's most powerful communication array. "Taemin, if you can hear this, you need to do something fast. The creature is losing control, and when it does, it's going to take half the system with it." Inside the collapsing dimensional space, Taemin felt the message reach him through the chaos. The Watcher was dying, its million-year-old consciousness finally fragmenting under the assault. But in its final moments, it was trying to use the last of its strength to minimize the dimensional collapse. "There might be one way," the creature whispered, its mental voice growing faint. "If I can transfer my dimensional stabilization knowledge to you, you might be able to complete the work your scientist began. Create a permanent bridge between our realities." "How?" Taemin asked urgently. "Touch my core consciousness directly. Accept my knowledge as a gift. But understand, the information transfer will be overwhelming. You may not survive it with your sanity intact." Taemin looked around at the collapsing dimensional space, at the civilizati. The dimensional collapse that should have destroyed the Centauri system never came. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Where the Void Stalker had been dying in agony, a new structure appeared in space. A bridge of crystallized light that pulsed with gentle, stable energy. Dr. Hee-jin watched her instruments in amazement from the research vessel. "The dimensional readings are stabilizing. Whatever Taemin is doing in there, it's working." Inside the bridge structure, Taemin floated in a space that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The Watcher's fading consciousness had merged with the dimensional interface he was building, creating something neither of them could have achieved alone. "Is this what you intended?" the ancient being asked weakly. Its voice was barely a whisper in Taemin's mind, but it carried wonder alongside the pain. "I think we've created something new," Taemin replied, still processing the vast knowledge flowing through his thoughts. "A permanent connection between dimensional realities. Your people's science combined with human engineering." The bridge they had built was beautiful beyond description. Streams of energy flowed in perfect mathematical harmony, creating a space where beings from different dimensions could exist safely together. The deadly effects that had made the Watcher so dangerous were completely neutralized. Outside, the Valerian fleet watched in stunned silence as their sensors detected something impossible. The creature they had been trying to destroy was communicating with them directly, and the signals were completely stable. General Kyung-soo stared at the translation appearing on his screens. "Please forgive my unintended harm to your people. I wish only for peace and understanding between our kinds." "It's talking to us," Sub-Commander Dong Jun said in disbelief. "The monster is actually talking to us." Captain Minho felt vindicated but took no pleasure in being right. Too many people had nearly died because of fear and misunderstanding. "General, request permission to dock with that structure. I think our champion needs medical assistance." For once, Kyung-soo had no immediate orders to give. Everything he thought he knew about their enemy had been proven wrong in the space of an hour. The creature wasn't a mindless destroyer. It was a refugee trying to make friends. "All ships stand down weapons," he said quietly. "Medical teams prepare for dimensional rescue operations." The next few hours were chaotic but hopeful. Rescue ships approached the dimensional bridge carefully, using Dr. Hye-jin's modified communication equipment to coordinate with the structure's occupants. When they finally brought Taemin back to normal space, he looked exhausted but triumphant. The knowledge transfer from the Watcher had left him changed in subtle ways. His eyes now held depths that seemed to see beyond normal reality. "How is our friend?" he asked immediately, referring to the Watcher. Dr. Hye-jin ran scans on the dimensional bridge. "Stable but severely weakened. The attacks damaged its consciousness badly, but the merge with your interface seems to be helping it heal." "It saved us all," Taemin said, looking back at the glowing structure floating in space. When it realized that losing control would destroy the colonies, it used its last strength to prevent the dimensional collapse instead of defending itself. Captain Minho nodded grimly. We owe our lives to a being we tried to murder. High Counselor Deho arrived with the relief fleet 12 hours later. The diplomatic vessel that carried him also brought Jiwan, who immediately began working on formal first contact protocols. This is unprecedented in galactic history, she said excitedly. First contact between dimensional civilizations. The legal and diplomatic implications are staggering. But first, they needed to address the immediate crisis. The Watcher was healing slowly inside the dimensional bridge, but it needed time to recover from the weapons damage. Meanwhile, the Centauri colonies were safe but still frightened by the recent events. Taman served as translator during the first formal communication session. The Watcher, speaking through the dimensional interface, addressed the assembled Valerian leaders with surprising humility. I take full responsibility for the unintended destruction I have caused, the ancient being said. I did not understand that my presence was deadly to your form of life. If there is any way I can make amends for the harm I have done, please tell me. General Kyungsu, who had led the attack just days earlier, struggled with his response. We attacked you without trying to understand. We were afraid. Fear is natural when encountering the unknown, the Watcher replied gently. My own people once feared contact with three-dimensional beings because we did not understand your nature. It seems fear is common to all intelligent life, Doctor. Hyujin presented her analysis of the dimensional bridge to the assembled leaders. This structure represents a completely new branch of science. With the Watcher's knowledge and our technology, we could revolutionize everything we know about physics and reality. The ancient being was eager to share what it had learned during millions of years of solitary exploration. I have watched the birth and death of galaxies. I have studied the mathematics of consciousness itself. I have been alone with this knowledge for so long that I had forgotten the joy of sharing discovery with others. Over the following days, a remarkable transformation took place. The Valerian Empire's greatest enemy became its most valuable ally. The Watcher helped them develop new technologies that seemed like magic to those who didn't understand dimensional physics ships that could travel between realities. Communication systems that worked instantly across any distance. Energy sources that drew power from the quantum vacuum itself. Medical techniques that could heal injuries by temporarily shifting patients into dimensional states where damage had never occurred. But the most important change was philosophical. The Watcher's perspective on time and existence challenged many of the Empire's assumptions about life and death, individual identity, and the nature of consciousness. You think of yourselves as separate beings, the ancient entity explained during one of their conversations. But from a dimensional perspective, all consciousness is connected. You are drops of water who have forgotten that you are part of the same ocean. Young diplomat Jiwan found this concept fascinating. So when someone dies, they don't really disappear. Death is a transition, not an ending, the Watcher replied. Your consciousness changes form but continues to exist. I have spoken with the echoes of my long-dead people in the spaces between realities. They are still there, still learning, still growing. This revelation brought comfort to many Valerians who had lost family members in the creature's accidental attacks. The knowledge that their loved ones continued to exist in some form helped heal the emotional wounds left by centuries of fear. General, Kyungsu made a formal public apology for the military's actions during what became known as the Battle of Centauri. We acted from fear and ignorance, he admitted before the Planetary Council. We nearly destroyed the greatest ally our people have ever had. The Watcher, displaying the patience that came from existing for millions of years, forgave the attack completely. You defended your people as best you knew how. There is no shame in that. Now we know better, and we can do better. Within 6 months, the Dimensional Bridge had become a permanent research station. Scientists from across the Valerian Empire came to study with the Watcher, learning sciences that had been developed over geological timescales. Taman split his time between the bridge and normal space, serving as the first human dimensional ambassador. The knowledge transfer had given him unique insights into both realities, making him the perfect intermediary between the species. It's ironic, he said, during one of his reports to Earth Command. They summoned me to kill their deadliest enemy, and instead I helped them make their greatest friend, Doctor. Heijin established a new scientific institute dedicated to dimensional research. Her team worked closely with the Watcher to develop technologies that could benefit both civilizations. Captain Minho was promoted to admiral and given command of the First Dimensional Exploration Fleet. His ships used Watcher-designed technology to explore the spaces between realities, making contact with other isolated beings who had been trapped between dimensions. The success at Centauri had profound effects throughout the galaxy. Other species began reconsidering their relationships with mysterious entities they had labeled as monsters or demons. Many discovered, as the Valerians had, that their greatest fears might actually be potential friends. The Cosmic Council, a loose alliance of spacefaring civilizations, established new protocols for first contact with dimensional beings. The Centauri Accords became the standard for peaceful interaction with entities that existed outside normal space-time. 1 year after first contact, the Watcher made a surprising announcement during a joint session of the Valerian Council and Earth's Colonial Senate. "I have been alone for so long that I had forgotten what hope felt like," the ancient being said. "But working with your people has reminded me that the universe is full of wonders yet to be discovered. I would like to propose a joint expedition to explore the deep dimensional layers, searching for other survivors from my people's time." The expedition was approved enthusiastically. Ships from multiple species joined the Dimensional Exploration Fleet, guided by the Watcher's knowledge of reality's hidden layers. During their travels, they disco,